FTX, everyone's getting their money back. 100% of people.
I'm really confused. I saw all the headlines today that everyone's getting paid in full. How?
I think the value of crypto have gone up.
Yeah, so it's just a price ascension.
Yeah, I literally think it's that.
So where was the crypto this whole time?
They found it.
So this moron is going to jail for 115 years.
For nothing.
For being a moron.
Yes.
Wow.
Their money was there.
I also think they had all those they actually made real investments in other companies and then they had to get all that money back. But that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, which is amazing. So if any Cathys, you had money in there, because I know we had some.
It'll still take time.
It'll take time, but at least there's a plan on the horizon. So I'm going to chalk one up for the U.S. government here. I always dish the U.S. government. The fact that everyone's getting their money back
impressive.
Is incredible.
Let's hope this still happens.
I think it's happening. I mean, as long as the prices keep inflating, it's going to be easier to give people their money back.
Sure.
Cash.
Ladies and gentlemen, group chat.
Cash.
It's $1 trillion. Hot.
All right, Cathys, we're going to start today's episode off with a longtime listener and several-time guest, Kevin Gould. Kevin, give us your background for any new Cathys out there.
Yeah, it's great to be back, guys. Good to see you. I can't believe we're actually at the end of January now, which is wild. How quickly the year's flown by. Quick background, started in the entertainment side, was managing a lot of YouTube and digital talent for years, and then kind of had a thesis around 6 years ago that I wanted to start building brands with and kind of around influencers. And I had angel invested in a beauty company previous to that. And so, around 6 years ago, I launched my first beauty brand. It's called I&H Hair. I did that with my co-founder, Sharon and Jordan, who were the first two employees at ColourPop Cosmetics. And then a year later, launched Glamnetic, which is a press-on nail and eyelash brand, and did that with my co-founder, Anne. And so, the last 5 or 6 years have been heavy on the consumer brand side. It's been a wild time, ups and downs.
Yeah.
But it's been good.
So one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on is just talk about the state of obviously brands and consumer, but more interesting, you just came back from China.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
I'm back. Yeah, I definitely. It's weird, man. I went.
You've been pre-pandemic.
I went pre-pandemic. I hadn't been in 4 years. We have a lot of our factory relationships over there. Not everything. We do make things in the U.S., but we have a lot of our partners over there. And so it's been 4 years. I landed in Hong Kong, so I spent 2 nights there. Hong Kong is incredible. I wouldn't really count that, obviously, as mainland China.
Yeah.
It's basically like,
It's still the same as it was, you think?
I'd never been to Hong Kong before, but it was, it's the New York of Asia, right?
Yeah.
Like happening, really cool.
You didn't see random CCP officers just roaming the streets?
That was later in the trip. Yeah, that wasn't Hong Kong. And then, I took a train from Hong Kong to Guangzhou.
Yeah.
Even going through customs, man, into mainland China, you feel like you are doing something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
So I take the train. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours from to get to Guangzhou. The biggest thing that surprised me about Guangzhou was, I'd never been there before. I went to other parts of China, the factories. How massive it is. There's
it's huge.
20 million people there.
Yeah.
I think in my mind, I was envisioning just like a ton of factories, which is true.
No, it's like New York City.
It's like New York City.
Yeah.
And the scale at which they're building up the city, we can't get like a skyscraper up in LA.
Yeah.
There's 50, 100-story skyscrapers being built in Guangzhou. I learned that you can't use a credit card there. The only way to pay for, you literally have to have
WeChat,
cash,
yeah.
or you have to have WeChat or Alipay.
Yeah.
And I ran around town for hours when I couldn't pay at a restaurant and had to try to find money, and it was like a shit show.
Yeah.
And then
is it a seamless process to load up money on your WeChat?
It would have been, except the American credit card got blocked, so I was fucked. And it's really important if you're an American to bring cash there.
Yeah.
And then I went to, the hair factory that we have is in a more rural part of China that's 2 hours away, and that's a whole other world. Guangzhou, big city. There's a little bit of culture there because there's obviously
there's
Americans
like
coming.
restaurants.
Yeah. I was the only American in this whole province. I went to the airport, saw no other Americans.
Yeah.
Had to, it's a respect thing to drink with the owners and the culture.
Yeah. A lot of drinking.
So I brought Lucas, who was like my right-hand guy with me this time, and he got pretty pretty obliterated drinking baijiu, which is like 90 proof alcohol.
Yeah, it's like rubbing
What's
alcohol.
baijiu?
It's like they're like
don't even try it ever.
Yeah.
It's like the absinthe kind of thing.
It's like 90 proof.
it's disgusting.
moonshine style.
Yeah, it is basically their moonshine.
And look, it's a respect thing. You have to drink it. So kind of gave that to Lucas this time. And I think the other thing that just, everyone works so hard over there, man. Yeah. I mean, they're working 6 or 7 days a week. So just from a productivity standpoint, they're working 35% more than just everyone here. Yeah. I think China obviously has its own issues right now that they're going through. But it was just an eye-opening trip because I hadn't been in 4 years, and we have such a fucked up relationship between China and the US, but in the end it works.
So in customs, did you get asked questions?
I mean, imagine they say, what do you do? And I say, I own a beauty brand. And then they looked at me, and this happened when I came back to the US too. They were like, do you have samples? I don't have samples. I got pulled aside, and I have global entry here. And you just feel like you're doing something wrong. Doesn't feel
Kevin, are you a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Exactly.
Well, what's your view on the Uyghurs?
Did you answer that question?
They
so what did they ask you? Because
they basically say, what are you doing here? Oh, you own a beauty brand. So like, who are you coming with? How long are you staying?
Lucas just wants to buy you.
Where are you staying? I mean, look, it wasn't that bad, but it was definitely you feel the pressure when you go through there.
So what's the mood in China?
I think the mood is that it seems like they've seen slowdown from a large majority of brands. There's also what's interesting, and this kind of ties into like TikTok Shop. There's also certain Chinese brands that are on the rise for them because now they're now selling in the US on TikTok Shop. So I think it's in a weird way. They're not even, these are Chinese brands that aren't even selling in China. Yeah. It's the Shein, not even the Sheins of the world, just in like even in our categories in nails or hair or lashes. And they're seeing those sales transfer over to the US and pick up some of the volume that was lost from the brands. And I think it also came out last week that China's like kind of on borderline deflationary right now. Like I think it was like negative 0.3%, inflation. And so I think they've got, some real issues to work through.
So before we get into D2C talk, I've never been to China. I know D's been a ton of times.
Never been?
Never been. Wow. Been to Hong Kong a bunch. Never been to China. And I don't remember pre-COVID. It was just very obvious from, D and all our friends who've gone that it's like a surveillance state, but even though it kind of was. But all the reporting says now it's like very obvious.
There's a camera every block. It's insane. Even we took going back from Guangzhou to Hong Kong, we drove, and you take a 33-mile drive over the South China Sea.
They just keep taking pictures
on a bridge, and you drive past Macau. There are cameras every 100 yards on a 33-mile highway. Yeah. It's like the surveillance state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are there actual officers just roaming the streets?
They don't need to. There's so many cameras.
Yeah. That was surprising to me.
But do they just hide in like a random stall and just jump out?
You have to understand, it's very different. Like nobody tests.
No one tests no one tests the system there.
No one tests the system. You just follow the fucking rules. It's very clear you do not break rules in China.
You fall in line.
This is a good story from, this is probably 10, 11 years ago. So one of my close friends from growing up, super smart dude, was working at Silver Lake. Like he was on the pathway to being like a partner, a very successful finance guy. He left it all to work for his childhood idol. I'm not going to say names because I don't want to get involved with the surveillance state. Yeah. But he's one of the most famous people in China, and he became his personal assistant. Wow. So he left like this cushy finance job to be his personal assistant. And he told me the local police, this is 10, 11 years ago, would check in on them and say like, hey, just know we're watching. Yeah. That's crazy. Because he has the power to like rabble rouse a crowd because he's famous enough to do that. And I can't imagine what they're doing to they also put a lot of people in jail, right? Yeah. So.
Well, I think, it's clear, like the TikTok CEO, he's a rap. We're never seeing that guy again.
Yeah, he's got to go.
Yeah. And then I think the interesting thing about China is you don't test the system, so you don't need police presence. They're fucking afraid.
It kind of reminds me of Dubai a little bit too. Like there's just these, I think, certain countries where you
well, they've made it clear this is what happens to you.
yeah, well, there's real repercussions. I think in LA, if you go rob a store, you're out the next day, right?
Yeah, in Dubai, they'll just cut your hand off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that, clearly that has been effective for some cultures. Does not work here because we just don't, everyone's pushing the limit on everything all the time. Can I run this red light? Oh, it's turning orange. Fuck it. I'm just going to just go.
That's the other thing, right? There's no outside the box thinking. Like, I'm trying to check in early to the hotel. Hey, can I get in a little bit early? No, sir. You get in at this time. And there's not
with no flexibility.
There's no flexibility there, right? So there's advantages and disadvantages of that. I think probably the U.S. needs maybe a little bit more of that, and then they need to think outside the box a little bit more.
I personally think. So when I went to China last was probably 4+ years ago, right? Right before pandemic. And at that time, I had felt China had all the makings of being the country of the future. I have zero confidence that that's happening anymore. Like I know for a fact, if I could bet money, I would bet that if I were to invest my own money, I'd invest it in America and I'd invest it in India. Those are the only two markets I believe are going, those are the future. That's the future in my opinion. I think Africa will be. It's just going to be another 50 years.
Yeah, it's going to take time.
What do you think? What perspective changed of yours in the last 4? Do you think?
So on China particularly, I think they overplayed their hand on COVID and basically crushed
on human rights, effectively.
Yes,
because
but specifically,
we were complaining in LA about lockdowns. But, you could still move around the city.
Yeah.
There was like cops outside of apartment buildings not letting you leave.
Yeah. And so I think the way they handled COVID was so wrong on so many levels. What they should have done, where they could have won the world over or won their own people over, forget the world they're never going to win over. People over is like, we're going to shut this fucking country down from anyone coming and going. But in this country, you could do whatever the fuck you want. Like they should have left everything open, left it, and then protected they had taken the view of protecting our people and let them lived. I think they crushed the soul of the country. And I think, yes, they're hardworking. They'll figure out how to make money. And I'm not so worried. Like their economy is going to struggle, but like they basically made it. Everyone I know who's visited, when I used to go to Guangzhou, when I'd be at the Ritz-Carlton at the lobby, it's Americans. I see people from LA and New York and run into people I know randomly. No one's going.
Did you see white people?
In Hong Kong for sure.
Yeah.
In Guangzhou, honestly, not many.
Yeah, which is crazy. I would see people, Europeans and Americans and Africans, and you see Nigerians. You see just fucking no one's going.
I'd say Guangzhou was probably 97% Chinese.
Yeah.
In the Four Seasons there.
Yeah. And so to me, the only way these countries become superpowers is you need some diversity, you need some immigration, you need to bring in different people need to come and move. And so what I see in India, like, I don't know if you follow Brendan Rodgers on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What he's posting every day about India. It looks like he's moved there.
Yeah.
And
what does Brendan Rodgers do?
He was one of the founders of WAG, the dog company, and basically became an investor. He has gone, you should follow him on LinkedIn. If you love India, you should follow this guy. He is pumping India up every day and why he thinks India is the future of investing. He's brainwashed me into thinking. And the facts are really like, it's clear like it's happening. Like India is the opportune place. Talent, English speaking, education. It is a democracy. You could do whatever the fuck you want there.
It's pseudo dictatorship on the veil of democracy. In my opinion. Yes, there's open elections, but it's controlled by Modi.
That's fine, but like you could do whatever the fuck you want in India.
The billionaires can't. They're all in line. So he can't jail you.
Yeah.
But he can make your life hell.
Sure.
Like in the U.S.
Yeah, because
there's proper bankruptcy courts.
Yeah, so in India, the biggest difference is those billionaires are so fucking reckless in the way they operate. So they're breaking
skeletons
laws
in the closet.
Yeah,
that's so does Modi.
Yeah, so that's fine. But like from an investment standpoint, people were investing in dictatorship, communist China.
It's basically, I've heard a handful of like famous investors on various podcasts say India is basically where China was in 2001. Like you're going to see that 20-year growth.
Yeah, and I think longer term, because it's English speaking.
I was about to say that's the big point, right? When I go to China, I mean, sure, Hong Kong, there's a lot of people who speak English.
Still tough.
I mean, I need a translator almost everywhere I go, right? And so I think that's like the big piece in the unlock between America with India is the English speaking.
Yeah, I think that is a big piece, and I think the other thing is, particularly in China, there isn't this appetite anymore for outsiders to want to do business there, move there. Who the fuck is going to move there? Nobody's moving to China.
And that was the promise. I remember 15, 20 years ago. I mean, we didn't have kids back then, but everyone's like, you have to have your kids learn Mandarin. That's the future.
Yeah.
What parent's teaching their kid Mandarin now?
Nobody. Unless you're from China.
Unless you're from China.
Yeah,
no, but people used to say that was a common...
Can I tell you something? What language you need to know? English.
Of course.
Only fucking language that matters. English. Yes. And by the way, like I was just in Europe for 2 weeks. Everyone spoke English and they learned how to speak English.
I don't know, man. I'm in Miami. I think I need to learn Spanish because
in Miami
it might be a little different.
Yeah.
I'm struggling sometimes.
Ironically, the day I spent in Miami, even just like in my hotel to get a towel, if you did not know Spanish, you could not. In Miami, you definitely need to know Spanish.
Yeah.
But like, it's interesting to see that like what's happening in China. It's kind of sad because it was this like
COVID pretty much set them back 20 years.
Yeah, and so switching topics. So one of the interesting things about China that we've talked about is that when a lot of these new emerging businesses, which are now global titans, Shein, TikTok, they were being built, Temu. They never focused on the local market. Like Shein doesn't sell in China.
Yep.
They focus on the American market.
American, European, South America.
Yeah. And I would guess 75% is America. Probably. If I would have guessed there. I mean, the buying power of America. We're clear. We're pigs. We buy the equivalent of the whole world. We eat and buy.
That's why everyone has to learn English.
Yeah. You better learn our fucking language. You want to get our money. And so we basically have shown that all you have to do is cater to the American market. You could basically tell the rest of the world to fuck off. And so these Chinese companies learned very quickly that this is the opportunity, not servicing our domestic market, because that's a race to the bottom. Exactly. And so Shein, TikTok, Temu, 3 companies that have effectively, in my opinion, changed American retail forever.
Yeah, and I think what they realize in China is that there's endless number of factories that you can go direct to consumer. Yeah. You can't even compete.
Yeah.
So like a $8 skirt that someone's getting off Shein, like a young girl, you can get that in a million places in China. Yeah. But in the US, there's one place.
What's interesting, so there's a huge YouTuber named Sophia Nygaard, and she put this video out like a couple months ago. Check it out. It's like, I bought the same dress for $4, $12, $18, and like $200. And it was like a House of CB dress, which is like a well-known like women's fashion business. And it basically through TikTok Shop, it was 4 different factories duping the same dress. But obviously when she went through, there was a huge quality difference. And so it's just crazy how quickly they're spinning up all this stuff.
I think the big thing that I think specifically a lot of American companies, retail, investors, the equity markets didn't realize that there's an enormous appetite for the American consumer for inexpensive things just in general. Like we just want to buy shit. And I think people always like, oh, the quality. No one gives a fuck.
Well, I agree with that to a point. Because look at dude, Wish was a fucking piece of shit company that sold, $3 everything. Yeah. And I think like the economics of that business didn't make sense. And you were pulling in a consumer that was so price sensitive. They were just buying garbage.
I think the problem with Wish, the only difference between Wish and Shein is Shein caught cultural
Shein
relevance.
is different. That's fashion and culture.
Yes, culture. Shein invested the money and culture that now, like, here's the thing. My guess, if you looked under the hood of Shein, it's not a good business. Like, if you looked at objectively, like if the Warren Buffetts of the world looked under the hood, they'd be like, this business is trash. But what I think people will realize, the game VC investors look at the world so differently. Like, it's basically a winner take all market on fast fashion. Invest, lock everyone up. And then, yes, maybe you can eventually raise prices that turn your company into profitability.
Well, the clothes on Shein are good enough, right?
Yeah.
They're good enough for the girl to get her IG pic and move on to the next photo, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it totally works it has worked for them for fashion. I just think when you go broadly out and it's, you know, it's all these other things that break after the first use. I think that.
But Temu, you know, and we talked about this, and I think you may have mentioned this too. Ryan Peterson from Flexport has been doing the podcast circuit, and he had said that 50% of air freight was direct to consumer, China to United States. So that's your Temu, that's your Shein. I've also heard from people who work at UPS warehouses tell me that 50% of the packages in December were Temu. If you see a sharp increase in revenue from Meta this earnings season, which I think is today or tomorrow, it is 100% Temu.
Meaning their ads.
Yeah.
People have estimated they spent $4.5 billion in the quarter. Temu, $4.5 billion.
That's crazy because I think peak Uber was like 150 million a month. So that's like 10x that.
I think with Temu, I'm just trying to figure out, like, is all this subsidizing that they're doing going to ultimately pay off? Because I think it's different than TikTok Shop, where I feel like TikTok Shop is they're built on a platform that pushes culture, right, with what they're doing already. And it seems like the user
TikTok
experience.
Shop is different than Temu.
Yeah.
So from you own brands.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about TikTok Shop. What's unique about TikTok Shop?
Well, I think you've got the audience there already.
Yeah, the
So
170 million Americans, according to the congressional hearing.
That's number one. You're building a fully cohesive shopping experience. I think the thing that they got wrong that they quickly need to fix is they had a bunch of these Chinese drop shippers crowding the feed for live shopping because no US brands yet were doing it. But I think they're slowly moving US brands over. And so I feel like they've got a way better shot than Temu in cracking the code here. And I don't know, man, I feel like Temu is going to be a little bit more like Wish long-term and
so on TikTok Shop, because I mean, admittedly, I haven't really played around with it. I just like the dances and the sports clips. You can buy real brands. Like, can you buy Nike?
No, but there's a lot of real brands on there.
There are real brands on there. They are getting brands like that.
Give me an example of a brand that I would know.
Represent.
Revolve.
Revolve has product there.
Yeah.
Is like Ralph Lauren?
No. No one major is on the platform.
You've got the forward-thinking, larger
beauty.
kind of beauty,
Beauty's on
beauty,
there.
fashion, apparel.
So Kylie Cosmetics?
Cosrx, hottest brand.
Elf Cosmetics. There's a ton happening in the beauty space on there.
Beauty
right
is
now as
definitely
well.
is leading the charge in terms of TikTok Shop. The other thing, I think, there's a huge difference. Like, TikTok is the platform. Temu is building a platform.
Yeah.
So Temu is also a number of factories connecting and selling direct to consumer. But it's clear that, like, the US consumer will wait for shipping, right? Like, Amazon announced yesterday, Andy Jassy said that I think 7 billion packages last year were shipped same day or within 24 hours. And then if you could go to Shein with the same stat and say they shipped within a month and no one gave a fuck.
Yeah, it's insane.
And so I think what you realize is that if you give people the value, the shipping time doesn't matter anymore. By the way, like, I've ordered stuff from,
contrary to Amazon's whole ethos.
Yes, which is people want things cheaper and faster, and they want cheaper, but they're willing to wait. I mean, any normal e-commerce site you buy product on, it takes 10 days.
Yeah.
No one's getting you product a day later except Amazon.
For sure. I mean, look, on Amazon, you're also, there's the expectation that it's going to come quicker because you're paying a yearly fee, right?
Yeah.
So you're paying that yearly fee.
Yeah.
You're buying, for the most part, real brands. I think we talked about it before, maybe on a podcast like a year ago, but like, I don't think it's going to happen. I wish they would do away with the rule that you can, and Ryan was talking about this a lot on his podcast, with the whole like $800 or below no tariffs rule from China, because I think that would cut a lot of this out of the system. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like there's been any movement at all there.
And I know he said this, that he said that Amazon is lobbying against it. I've actually heard the opposite. I've heard that Amazon benefits from this as well, and because so many of their Chinese sellers are shipping directly from China on Amazon.
And you have no idea where it's coming from.
No.
You just get an Amazon package.
On Amazon, it just says it'll arrive February 14th.
Yeah, I wonder how much of Amazon's volume is not Chinese brands fulfilling, FBA. Yeah. And it's actually them drop shipping from China.
I bet you it's very significant.
If you're telling us that they're secretly lobbying against it.
I don't think.
Well, so then you answered your question that you posed so many episodes.
Yeah.
Why this is allowed. Yeah. If Amazon, probably top 5 lobbyist in DC, is saying keep this game going.
Yeah. Because in Amazon's they probably are like,
who cares if Shein has 20 billion in revenue?
But do you think it's that high though? Because when's the last time that you guys bought something that wasn't on Prime? Right? Like that was actually not fulfilled, not Prime.
So forget me, but I think there are a lot of items on Amazon that are not on Prime that people want and are price sensitive that take 2 weeks to ship. And
so I would guess your household, similar to ours, Amazon is just the commodities. It's toilet paper, napkins, soaps, detergent. Yeah. So that's not probably the customer that's benefiting from the Chinese dropship.
Yep. I think the other issue is that you have now you have Temu, you have Shein, you have probably a lot of TikTok shop. You have 3 things that the American consumer likes. So they've exploited this law where this sub $800 product can now come in. And I think the American consumer likes it. So politicians can't do anything. Like, you can't ban TikTok now, right? You should ban it.
I mean, Congress was lobbying for it. So if you were to look at...
you lose an election, you ban TikTok.
I was actually on the way over here. I was just watching all the clips because it was pretty entertaining. Yeah. How these guys are all worth tens of billions of dollars. And they have to go get publicly lashed. Yeah. And then I was thinking, is this just a good viral clip for the senator? Because is anything actually going to happen? Probably not.
Well, that's what it feels like with all of these hearings, right? They drag all these people up. You get the 2 days of TikTok clips, and then nothing ever happens. Yep. And it's like rinse and repeat once a quarter.
Yeah, I think that's what...
And there's 6 Congress men and women that know exactly how to go viral. Yeah. Right? It's the same ones every time.
Know. I saw someone tweet this morning before the Congress. He goes, all this is just to go viral on social media.
Yeah, and you're probably right, and that nothing actually does happen.
They embarrassed Mark Zuckerberg to have to go apologize to the families.
He needed a haircut, man. He should have got a fresh cut before he went up there.
I think it's just saying that these guys are bad guys. These are the bad hombres, and we gotta just
how happy is Jeff Bezos that he doesn't have to deal with any of this? Yeah, he's on his
he got out clean.
$500 million yacht or however expensive it is. Yeah, just sailing around the world.
Doesn't even he moved to Miami. He doesn't know
he's chilling. Yeah, paddleboarding.
Yeah. Do you think he caught a clip? No chance.
What? You think he gives a shit? He's not even paying attention to the stock market. He doesn't give a shit what's going on. Yeah. These guys can go kill each other as far as I'm concerned. I'm out. Yeah. I think, I think that, just to put a pin on it, the American consumer is addicted now. You can't take away Temu. They love it because the alternative is someone's going to say, this is benefiting the U.S. consumer.
Because they have affordable goods?
Yeah. We're fighting inflation by letting Temu sell cheap shit to our things. And I've shared this in previous episodes. The dollar store in America is getting crushed by Temu.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, really?
Dollar?
2 years ago, I heard a whole deep dive on the dollar store and how it's one of the only growing brick and mortar
Okay,
stores.
Dollar General controlled 79% of the dollar market in America January 2023. Today they control 49%.
Wow.
1 year.
They were the darling of brick and mortar.
They're going to catch a brick now.
TJ Maxx is flying.
Walmart's opening stores.
Walmart's fine.
Have you seen the meme? It's like the hot girl, like, oh, he's a Walmart manager.
Yeah.
Because Walmart managers make apparently $120,000 a year.
up to 400 now
It's like the
within
UPS
stock.
driver. They're all in like 170.
So a Walmart manager can earn with stock bonus and health compensation up to $400,000 a year.
Yeah. Higher college education's over. Do you know how impossible it is to make $400,000 a year out of college? It's literally impossible.
Out of college?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like 20 years of work experience. Someone who makes $400,000 is either top bucket at a hedge fund.
And you can't get that job out of college.
No.
Banking, hedge fund, private equity, or you're incredible at sales and you're bringing
salesperson,
down.
yeah.
That's 4 years in. You
Yeah.
can make that.
Yeah.
You're not making that. So if you start at Walmart at 16, you
Yeah.
could probably be a manager by 22.
Yeah. And if you live in a region where Walmarts are popular, your cost of living, my guess, is lower. You're basically the
You're
richest
getting
guy.
season tickets to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
You're
chilling.
celebrating. You're going to Vegas for the Super Bowl. You're doing it all.
I know. And what's crazy is instead you're going to take a $40,000 a year job at your dream company
Yes.
and live in a big city you can't afford.
And you'll have
rack up debt.
4 people in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. But you'll have some good stories.
Exactly.
But the 400K, the millionaire next door.
He's going to Vegas.
Yeah.
For Super Bowl.
And speaking of that, we were talking about UPS. UPS is cutting 12,000 people, saying the package volume for this year they're predicting it to be low, which is really interesting because they're the ones that just gave everyone the big raise 6 months ago. And now, so what's interesting is GM came out and said that they upped their guidance and they expect car demand to be very strong. Visa came out and said consumer is resilient. Amex said consumer is resilient. UPS, though, said they're expecting a slowdown. So does that tell you that spending has not decreased? It just shifted from goods to other things because, and this was the big takeaway I got from my Europe trip where a lot of the locals were saying, yes, restaurants are packed, retail is hurting, and people have just chosen the experience and being out is more important than having goods.
Yeah, it seems like that's a natural shift that's happening. I mean, we're 1 month into January. I think from my perspective, and I've talked to a lot of just on the e-com side, I've talked to a lot of other founders, can look at our own brands, obviously. I think it's heavily category dependent for sure. There's some categories that are like flying. So like for Glamnetic, we're in the nail category. That category is on fire right now.
Yeah. Well, because people are going out.
For sure. Lashes, though, softer, right? It's even within beauty, it's a category specific thing. But I have a friend that runs a big 3PL and they're like, 90%, of brands are down for January year over year. And it's softer.
90%?
90%. Taking out the anomalies of like maybe the larger brands. If you just look at these like, $5 to $50 million e-commerce brands, at least in January, it's softer. It seems like the consumer spent a little too heavy in the holidays.
Yeah,
and then
holiday spending was strong.
Yeah, and I think they're out of cash, at least for now.
Yeah.
And then I think the other big problem for US e-com brands is we're going into election year. CPMs on Facebook in the back half of the year are going to be sky high, right? So
It's just to explain it's because all the politicians are going to be bidding.
Yeah, so now you've got, to Dee's point, you've got Temu dumping $4 billion a year into Meta. You've got the elections coming up.
Quarter, right? Did you say quarter?
Whatever crazy number they're spending. You've got the elections coming up where there's going to be billions and billions of dollars flowing in, and that's just going to obviously increase the cost.
Yeah, Sleepy's going to spend a lot.
Well, they'll each spend, I think, combined $3 billion on campaign spend.
Yeah, and
at the minimum.
Well, that's just their elections. Then you have all the local elections
the
and state elections and everything else.
Yeah, the bonds and
but
bills.
if you look at the fourth quarter data, the spend was there, but yes, it just got shifted because GDP growth was 3.5%.
Yeah.
It like knocked that out of the water.
Yeah. And I think the what you did see when you start breaking down what's happening is that there's an enormous spend by the US government to basically uplift the economy at this point. The hiring of jobs is coming from government jobs. A lot of the spend is coming from, so like, it is accurate probably in the sense that GDP has grown. It's just that in the world that we all live in, which is more kind of consumer facing stuff.
Yeah, like defense probably was through the roof.
Defense, healthcare, those things are through the roof, which is going to carry the country. And I think what people, and the problem now I see in the job market, and this is just a function of like, people are very like prideful now that they are picked a career or they want to do something. And, you know, being in e-commerce or being in social media was such in vogue the last decade. That is not where the action is now. Mm-hmm. It's not where the growth is. It's not the future of like, you should be going like when in our era of our parents in the 80s, defense was the place to be. You know how many Indian people came from India and worked in the defense industry?
Yeah,
Every engineer and all of our family friends. Think about it. We would go to dinner at McDonnell Douglas, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, because that's where, you know, that's where the money was and the stability. Today, that's not where the stability is.
I mean, look, I think the sexiest businesses from the outside looking in are always the ones that you end up making the least in. And I went to
marketing.
I went to a really interesting conference like 6 months ago. And for me, it was just, I wanted to go there on like a learning expedition. It was called the Holdco Conference. And it was all these entrepreneurs that go by cash flowing small businesses. And it's maybe, you know, not your headline $100 million business. It's a $3 million landscaping business that throws off $1 million in profit a year.
Yep.
They buy it at 3x EBITDA. And then they've paid back all of the debt that they used on it in 2 years. And now they've got this business that's making $1 million a year cash for them.
And they could flip it to a private equity company for $8-9 million.
For sure. And it's you know, it might not be the sexiest category to have a plumbing business or an HVAC business or a landscaping business, but those are the companies that are the backbone of the United States. And they actually make real money because those are essential businesses for the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point about the non-sexy businesses, there was, every week there's multiple conferences in Vegas. And last week was a cement conference. And
don't want to get stuck there.
They said it's one of the busiest weekends, like biggest uplift in spend. And it's these like non-traditional businesses that no one wants to go into.
Yeah.
There's so much money in it.
Yeah. And I think if you look at where there's going to be like the next set of mega job creation, given that Biden just passed that infrastructure bill, like infrastructure is going to get a humongous boom because there's going to be money spent on it. So cement, construction, like America is going to have to spend that money internally to grow our economy. And yes, there will be some technology pieces, elements to it. And like defense is clearly an issue. Like I think if you went to every American today, should we spend more money on defense? Everyone's going to say yes now, given the tension in the world. So it's like but the thing is the workforce has to want to go to those jobs and want to actually work there.
Yeah, a young kid rather grind 17 hours doing their own clips, filming clips.
Yeah.
When you could just go work at a cement company.
I have another buddy who's in like the auto kind of collision roll-up space. There's whether it's plumbers, like expert mechanics, there's a huge shortage of these specialized roles, and those are all 6-figure jobs in success, but no one wants to do it.
Yeah, that is really, and the sad part is we don't have legal immigration anymore. We only have illegal immigration. And so you can't even build a workforce of people that are willing to do these jobs, right? Like, for example, you know, Sleepy's let in 10, 50 million people, who knows at this point, right? And so those people are employable.
For sure.
They have skills, but no company is legally allowed to hire them. And God forbid you hire an illegal person, then you bear the risk of like maybe ruining your business. Yes, they're all being employed somehow, but like, why not just, we're going to have to figure this out because like clearly there's a low wage worker shortage that like Americans don't want.
The dirty little secret, the dynamic we're just describing, the price of the cement guy is just going up.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough people that want to go into that industry. If you have any friend that's doing renovations on their house, he goes, it's impossible to find a glass guy, impossible to find, a contractor. Everyone's booked out. You want to build a pool, you're waiting, 6 to 12 months to get like the proper pool guy.
The handyman in Miami can make his price up. It's crazy. There's just such a shortage of like good handyman in that market.
Back to the basics, America.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Build back better.
I think to kind of wrap it up too, Shamath, I think on All In the other day, Shamath had an interesting point where, obviously everyone's immigrating to the country now. There's no sophistication around who's coming in. And I think he had this like thought process or theory where we know where there's demand and lack of supply of certain workers. So in theory, if there's a shortage of plumbers in a certain market, you would bring trained plumbers from Mexico into those markets and place them there, as opposed to just having an open border and everyone coming across and it's a free for all.
Yeah, I mean that's my point. I think we need to come up with an immigration plan pretty quick because it will be deflationary.
Yes,
instantly. Because instead of paying, some local white person $24 an hour to work at Taco Bell,
24
to work at Taco Bell, you'll get an immigrant that's dying to have the job at 15, right? And I think like there's an opportunity that like we can be very deflationary with proper immigration and solve a lot of these problems that the country has, which is clearly a missing every fucking place that has, call it unskilled worker needs people. Like everyone says, every restaurant says they can't hire people. This says they can't hire people. So there's a huge opportunity there. But yeah, so we'll have to see how it all plays out. I wanted to touch on a couple other news topics before we end the week. One of them is around the PGA. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a pretty big deal. PGA has basically got an offer and a finalizing agreement where they will get an infusion of $3 billion at a $12 billion valuation. And it's like Mark Lazary,
Steve Cohen.
It's like big.
Mark Antonazio, the Fenway Group.
Yes. And so now
LeBron owns the PGA. He's part of the Fenway Group.
Is he? Okay, great. I think incredibly cheap. If you look at like a sports franchise, right? Like basically you can't get in for a few billion, right? Yeah. That's,
You get the whole thing for 12.
You get the entire golf for 12? It's a steal.
Yeah, they were basically getting bled out by Liv.
Yeah.
And they had no choice. And they'll ultimately merge with Liv. That's what everyone assumes.
Yeah.
So this just buys them time to probably get a better agreement.
Yeah, better deal. And now they have the cash. Yeah. They can go.
What
and
are
fight.
the TV rights on golf? Do you know? Like, obviously WWE got their $500 million a year. Like, what's the PGA get?
Probably nothing. No one's watching.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's watching.
But I do think there's an opportunity that you if you were like, I don't know, Ari Emanuel, you could probably package this up. Go to all the big networks. So look, you spend $500 million a year on original content that no one's watching. It's better to spend $500 million on PGA, and you guarantee you get some eyeballs.
It's weird they haven't integrated like the best elements of Top Golf, which brought everyone into contested events, right? Like long drive contests.
Well,
I mean, there's elements of that.
Well,
but
look, now that it's PGA used to be a nonprofit. Now it is a for-profit. Now you just got arguably 4 pigs into the business who are not going to fuck around.
Yeah.
They're going to stick their 26-year-old $1 million a year analyst in there, and they're going to tell them, here are 7 ideas you're going to implement to make us more fucking money tomorrow. Because they're not going to be like tradition, all that shit. Yeah, I don't think Steve Cohen and these guys
they're not going to fall in line. Like
no. They'd be like you better
China.
get a Tiger hitting golf, doing driving range.
I mean, Tiger and his son should just go on tour.
Yes.
Everyone watch
They're
that.
going to milk the shit out of golf now. Because now it's clear they have threat. So if you don't innovate, you're gone.
Yep.
So
the problem is for golf, the golf that the public consumes, which is these boring tournaments every weekend, isn't the fun part of golf.
No, it's
the fun part of golf.
It's with the boys.
The boys.
Yeah.
And even our friend Kelly James, who does the Celebrity Pro-Am pretty much every Wednesday before every tournament, he does like his little freestyle.
Party.
He posts all of it on his Instagram. And that's fun. I watch that. I don't watch the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, the tour, they should have a tour called The Boys, and it's just a couple dudes just playing golf, drinking beers.
I know you probably definitely remember because you're on social media a lot. When Snapchat was kind of in the early days, all those guys, Ricky Fowler, they were in the Bahamas with their shirt off, drinking beers,
of course.
just going nuts.
Yeah, there was like a 3-week period where it was popping.
Yeah, and they probably got more viewership on those Snapchats than everything,
For sure.
telecast golf.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited. I think it's great for golf, actually.
You know what people want to know? What's going on in the country club at the patio?
Like, there should be a show called Locker Room Talk. It's hosted on Saturday nights of the golf, and it's literally like, it's a little racist, it's a little homophobic, it's like it's like what's really happening. And it's 4 old white guys sitting in a locker room, like shirts off, bellies out, talking shit.
They need their Shannon Sharp, Ocho Cinco content
of the golf.
You got to call up Jad and get him in on these ideas.
Exactly. I think that's what golf needs. Golf needs to just loosen up. It's over. Your tradition is over.
Yes.
You need to evolve fast. Make it fuckery. That's what's going to keep the fans engaged. You don't have a Tiger Woods. I'm sorry.
No.
You just don't. There's no one
on the horizon.
No one cares about any of these people. Make it fun. Make it engaging. You have golf participation at all-time high. This is your opportunity. All right, moving on. I thought this is fascinating. FTX, everyone's getting their money back. 100% of people.
I'm really confused. I saw all the headlines today that everyone's getting paid in full. How?
I think the value of crypto have gone up.
Yeah, so it's just a price ascension.
Yeah, I literally think it's that.
So where was the crypto this whole time?
They found it.
So this moron is going to jail for 115 years.
For nothing.
For being a moron.
Yes.
Wow.
Because their money was there.
I also think they had all those they actually made real investments in other companies and then they had to get all that money back. But that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, which is amazing. So if any Cathy's, you had money in there, because I know we had some.
It'll still take time.
It'll take time, but at least there's a plan on the horizon. So I'm going to chalk one up for the U.S. government here. I always dish the U.S. government. The fact that everyone's getting their money back is incredible.
Let's hope this still happens.
I think it's happening. I mean, as long as the prices keep inflating, it's going to be easier to give people their money back.
Sure.
So that's amazing. All right, we're going to wrap with 2 topics. Obviously, one of the biggest topics of the day, our guy, Jay Powell, had his meeting today, the big Fed meeting. Did not go as planned. Mm-hmm. The market did not like what he had to say. He was hawkish. Hawkish means he sees that inflation is still here. He wants that 2% inflation he wants inflation to come down to 2%. And he basically said that he doesn't think we're going to cut rates in March. That could be just posturing. I think it is, because I think the market got ahead of itself. Either way, the market got thrashed today. It does now start putting in doubt with March. I didn't think March was going to happen to begin with. I really felt like it was going to start in the summer. They've made it clear from the moment they started raising rates, they want pain. If you look at the Visa and Amex spending, there is no pain. There's joy. And yes, there's a portion of the market that is still struggling and consumers are feeling it. We know there's a community bank. What was the bank today? New York Community Bank?
New York Community Bank that bought Signature Bank at the same weekend that Silicon Valley Bank had to get rescued. And so New York Community Bank's a regional bank. They rescued Signature Bank. Their earnings were terrible.
Yeah. Stock
was down 44% in the first few hours of the market. That to halt the stock.
Yeah.
So they're going to zero.
Yeah.
New York Community Bank's going to zero.
No, JP Morgan will buy it.
Sure. But the equity holders will go to zero.
Yeah.
And
this is the only thing that will force JP's hand.
Because now if New York Community Bank is struggling, then every other regional bank's struggling.
Yeah.
And if you talk to any regional bank and anyone who talks to any of these banks about lending, their capacity is full. They can't lend. It's only the major banks.
Well, it's also just going to be a slow trickle when all of the commercial real estate loans come due.
Sure.
And then all the commercial real estate owners are already upside down.
Yeah.
But I think to your point on the rate decrease, why would they decrease rates unless there's actually serious softening in pain?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like there's enough
There's
yet
not enough
in
pain.
order to do that.
But when you say the credit card, because every story you read is that consumers at an all-time high of credit risk, meaning how much they've spent on their personal credit cards,
But that's not pain.
and they're spiraling. So you just need to wait for them to spiral.
No, we need, that's not pain. Pain is when you stop spending. If you're spending, you know why you're spending? Because you know you got a check coming.
Yeah.
You got money coming. When you stop spending, like if Amex had shown a decrease or Visa had shown a decrease, I'd say there's pain. There's no fucking pain.
Yeah, and
As far as they're concerned, are people hurting economically? 100%. But the data they are looking at shows them the consumer is resilient. And that's the problem. Until that shifts, there's no change happening.
So you're in Miami. What's the temperature of the consumer?
I mean, Jesus Christ.
Man, those restaurant prices keep going up.
Yeah.
There is no downturn in Miami as far as I can tell.
You go to LA, you go to a restaurant,
Yeah.
it's slammed.
But I still think, I just don't understand how Miami supports 100 restaurants every night that are fully packed. And there's maybe like 10 or 15 in LA that are like that.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna share with you something I learned. I was on a 4-hour car ride looking at a warehouse the other day. And the young man in the car, I asked him, he's in my ghost industry now, but I was like, what's your background? He's like, I used to be in retail. I worked at Vuitton. I worked at Barney's. Oh, okay, cool. Retail guy. I'm like, where'd you work? He's like, in LA, the Beverly Hills store. I was like, who are your shoppers? He's like, of my book of business, he said 99% were drug dealers. He had one legit person.
wow.
And so when you think of a place like Miami,
A lot of fake jobs down there.
yes, there's a lot of fraud happening. I mean, it's the healthcare fraud of the world. Is it Florida, South Florida particularly? There's obviously drug dealers. There's bookies. There's the economy. The high end part of the economy is being held up by illicit activities.
It's weird though with Miami, because I think for sure 7 or 10 years ago, Miami would have been completely all that. And then now there's this like,
okay. So 20. What do you say? 50% now.
yeah, I think it's like 50-50.
Okay, so 50% is still fraud.
There's still a lot of people where you ask them what they do and you don't understand after they explain it for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so like when you go to one of the hot restaurants, we don't need to name the names. What's the demo? Like how many would you say you'd be like, yeah, that's a working professional that, made his money. This is someone, it's gotta be.
Maybe it's like a third. It's like a third. There's like a third tourist coming in. There's like a third
tourists,
true people that have real jobs that make good money. And then there's
fraud.
a third of you don't know what they do.
Yeah.
Because it used to be crypto, probably was a lot of it when you probably first moved
for
there,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
You moved
Probably
2020?
2020, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure there was a lot of crypto money.
Yeah. Now it's
back to just drugs.
back to fraud.
Yeah.
Drugs and fraud.
All right. Well, on that note, what we've learned today on today's episode that there's a lot of funny business happening.
So drugs, so what we learned, you want to get rich, drugs
Or plumbing.
fraud, cement and plumbing.
Is Ghost just a big front D? What do you got going on with Ghost?
I wish. I'm in the wrong business myself. I'm killing
You're
myself.
very secretive about it. You don't talk about it too much. You're like, I'm under the radar with this startup.
You don't know what we're selling back here.
Man, you'll move anything.
Yeah. All right, Kevin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was always fun.
If you see D in Miami, you'll know
I
what
know,
he's up to.
he's got meetings.
All right, guys.